introduce our presenters. It's members night, so this is where we have our fellow members tell us about their amazing trips. And so we're very excited. Gretchen is always delightful, so we're asking Gretchen to come up here and talk about her adventure cycling. I always tease her, she'll bike across Australia, bike across the United States, so she's here to share those with us.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to talk about my trip across the southern United States from St. Augustine, Florida to San Diego, California. I want to first preview this with the fact that we use adventure cycling maps, or I prefer to use them because of a couple of reasons. Number one, they tell you where the next campsite is, where the next hotel is, where the stores are. And the other reason is if you use adventure cycling maps, other people use adventure cycling maps, and you run into other people that are cycling the same route you are, and you can hang out with them for a few days or even maybe halfway across the country. So I recommend using them if you're going to cross the country or do any extensive bicycle touring. The reason I like to bicycle tour is several reasons. You get great scenery. There's interesting historical and cultural facts. It's a low carbon footprint. You meet a lot of nice people. And great exercise. Can't read my own writing. Okay. Also, you can lose weight, a lot of weight. Okay, I started out in Jacksonville because the train let me off in Jacksonville. That's why I have the Atlantic Coast trip here. And from Jacksonville, went to the coast to get routes. It's sometimes advantageous to call local bike shops, or in this case, I called a bicycle club in Jacksonville and asked them how to get to the route. And I was not the first one to ask that question. So I actually started in Jacksonville and met up with Bill. I put a notice in Adventure Cycling's Companions 1, and Bill was one of the people that signed up, and he took the plane in, and we met on the coast. This is the inland waterway going from Jacksonville to St. Augustine. Some of the wildlife along the way. Whoops, that last one I pressed too fast. Whoop. We're missing some of this stuff. Anyway, this is our group going to across the country, at least the group we started with. The Pirate House Inn is where we stayed the first night in St. Augustine. St. Augustine, some of the historical facts is it's the oldest continuous settlement in the United States. So you learn some history when you cross the country by bike. We have Pete here on the left, and me, and Caroline, Bill, and Diane. We started with them, and while I was at the Pirate House, somebody emailed me and said they wanted to go on the trip, and so they met us. They were going to meet us in Pensacola. Okay, here's the start from St. Augustine to Defuniak Springs. I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly. Is the first leg of the trip. And you can see we have some very nice quiet roads with moss on them. Lots of interesting scenery. This is the first restaurant we stopped at. First day out. This is a bike trail into Gainesville. Some nice scenery from the bike trail. And this is the end of February. So it is very nice to get out of Rochester at the end of February and to see some nice flowering trees. Now this is in Gainesville, middle of downtown Gainesville, which is the home of the University of Florida. And we stayed at the Zen Hostel there. And found out a lot about chickens. They're very curious, so every time we did something, they were kind of following us around. Here's a group picture outside the Zen Hostel in Gainesville. And we have different animals along the way. We're in Tallahassee now, and this is the capital. We were kind of under the gun to get to Pensacola because we were going to meet Kimberly there. She's the one that signed up at the last minute. So we didn't spend much time, and I had bike trouble, so I had to get to the bike shop. This is an ongoing thing. So we just sort of breezed through Tallahassee, the state capital of Florida. This is Defuniak Springs, a very beautiful town with a lake around it. This is just an example of a lot of the architecture in that town. And it had a lake with some little ducklings. And this is just to indicate that they had a teachers association for whites, and they had a teachers association for blacks, and they joined in 1966, a little bit more history. Now you can see that not all of the roads are really nice to travel on. Some are very busy, so don't expect perfect conditions for biking all the time, but there are some really nice roads on this trip. And some nice beaches along the way, and nice parks along the beaches. And here we are in Pensacola, going down, that clock was late 1800s clock that had been moved here last 20 years. This is where we were to meet up with Kimberly. And this was Sunday morning, so it was pretty desolate in Pensacola. And I'm riding down the street looking for a restaurant. We find a restaurant, and this woman comes up to me and she says, "Gretchen." And I'm like, "I don't know anybody here. What's going on?" Turned out it was Kimberly. I mean, how many people are going to be riding through town with, fully loaded bikes? So she guessed it was us. Okay, from Defuniak Springs, we got to St. Francisville, Louisiana. Some interesting southern things going on. And we're in Alabama. And on Mobile Bay, we have to take a ferry across. We got some pelicans to look at while we're waiting. And here comes the ferry, and here we are on the ferry. And some local interest, a yellow coward shot this tin man, the SOB. And some interesting places to live. Melody was particularly a nice person. We met her at a place, a gas station, convenience store where we were stopping for a snack. And she said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" She actually horseback ride and camped with her horses. And we said, "No, we're fine." She said, "Wait here." So we waited. Well, we were relaxing anyway, taking a break. She comes back with a quart bag of pecans. She's a pecan farmer and had them frozen in her freezer and gave them to us. Lots of people are very kind to you when you're bike traveling. I don't know if they feel sorry for you or what. Lots of wildlife. I don't know who was more curious about this, us or them. First taste of goobers. Those are boiled peanuts. Now we get to Louisiana. And this was the year that the Saints were in the Super Bowl. Did they win the Super Bowl? I don't remember. I'm sorry. I'm not a big football fan. And here is an interesting place to stop for a lunch break or dinner break, Robin's Sneak Nest Food, Soul Food, barbecue chicken. Very good meal for what you think you might get at a place like this. And when we passed by this Inspiration Park where we spent maybe a good hour or two, because it was really quite attractive. A nice pathway, a nice chapel, and flowers in bloom, and then we're on our way again. Some more nice bicycle path. And here's Perry in I believe that's Jackson, Louisiana, and she has a bicycle hostel which is perfect. It sleeps 4, it has laundry, and she was building a house on the side. So, whoops, that was a turkey at the Audubon Center. This is the Audubon Center in outside of St. Francisville. And Audubon had spent some time here, and this is where I learned for the first time he used to kill the birds before he painted them. So that fan was used to keep people cool in the summertime over the dinner table. So on from St. Francisville to Navasota, I don't know if I pronounced that, Texas. And here's the ferry over the Mississippi. Lots of traffic on the Mississippi. It was flooding that year on the Mississippi. And an old jukebox at one of the places we stopped. And I sort of enjoyed that sign. This was in Washington, Louisiana, and this is a historical fact that they used to bring male slaves here that were big and strong and use them for studs. And they would bring black women slaves there to impregnate them so they'd have strong workers. And this was Slim, believe it or not. At one time maybe he was Slim and they still called him that. So we danced, sort of danced the night away at his place, and he gave us free camping, free meal, and free alcohol. A really nice guy. And, some nice murals along the way. Now this field access 2 purposes. You have crayfish, which they're picking up now, and it's a rice field normally. And we're in Texas. And we're in Texas. And we're in Texas. You spend a lot of time on this trip in Texas. But the redwoods were in bloom, wildflowers were in bloom, some nice pathways, and we're on to Austin, and some more wildlife. This is McKinney State Park outside of Austin, about 10 miles, so we stayed there a couple nights while we rode into Austin. And saw the big city. Austin is a very friendly bike city, so it's easy to ride there. Went to the state capitol, learned a bunch of history about Texas. It belonged to Mexico, it belonged to Spain first, then Mexico, then it became its own republic, and then it became part of the United States. It was 10 years its own republic. And a little guitar there. We had a tack swan along the waterways in Austin. Fortunately, she didn't lose her toes. And we have, this is the famous Austin Bridge where the bats come out of. Welcome to the world's largest urban bat colony. Unfortunately, we were a little bit early for the bats. They hadn't quite come back. The ranches also have this interesting facade where they put a lot of decoration at the gates of the ranches. Just showing you a little bit of it. Now this was outside of, let's see if I can find out what town that was. We stayed at an EMS place. A lot of people will put you up for free. Historical societies will put you up for free. This was an EMS place that puts us up for free. This wasn't an EMS place, but this was in the same town as that. It was not very far outside of Austin. Well, I forgot to mention our welcome to Texas. Our first indication or the first problem we had in Texas was we're going to get a really big storm in Texas. And so we stopped at Kirbyville to see about motel reservations because we didn't really want to be camping or be on the road with this big storm. Well, they told us the one motel that somebody was thrown out the glass window of the motel. So then we asked, well, is there another motel? And they said, yeah, but that one's worse. So let's see if I can find. This was Wimberley. That's where this was. Oh, and that morning there was ice on the tent. It generally warmed up to 60 degrees at least, so it was very pleasant bicycling, but it did get cold at night. And this is the way you stay at a motel to dry your tent off. Put your tent up. Some interesting sculptures on the way. And this was a town. Sorry about that. I'm looking for the name of the town. It had this was like a museum. Kerrville is the name of the town. The cowboy artists of the American Museum with Cowboys. And these are actually quilts, which I thought were quite interesting. I've never seen, I'm not sure I've seen them. I have seen some detailed quilts, but these were picturesque, very picturesque. This was in Hunt, Texas. We had to go off route a little ways, and this was a mini Easter island. And I don't understand. I guess if you have old boots, this is what you do with them. Now we're in the hill country of Texas, and some of the scenery for the hill country. And lots of wildflowers. A good time of the year was spring. There had been rain, and some vultures. Again, some ranches or wildflowers. And now we're going from Del Rio to El Paso. And by the way, we're still in Texas. Now, this is Seminole Canyon State Park, and this is where I met up with Bubba. I left the group here because they were willing to camp where there wasn't a bathroom. I am not willing to camp where there isn't a bathroom, so I left the group, or they went ahead of me. And I caught up with them. And this was a state park. It said Seminole Canyon State Park, and I met up with Bubba here. And Bubba runs tours across the country. He was running a west to east. And the reason I didn't want to go west to east, which is what most people do, is because right out of San Diego, you have a 3,600-foot pass to climb. And at the end of February, I'm not ready to climb a 3,600 foot pass. So he was going, but he gave me dinner and breakfast with his group. He had a group of about 10, and they had a catering service to follow. And he also runs, if anybody's interested, he also runs a trip to the Keys in November every year. Remember that, Bubba Trips. Bubba Pampered Trips, I think they call them. And right outside of that, or about a few miles out, is where these guys, the other people camped, which doesn't have a bathroom. It has a bathroom during the day, but it doesn't have a bathroom at night. And this is Roy Bean, Justice of the Peace, Law West of the Pecos. Schauss, and get to learn a little bit about the history of Roy Bean, which is fairly colorful, which I won't get into here. And this is the bar, Jersey Lily, and we're back out onto the main highway and more scenery. Now this was a co-op, an agricultural co-op, which was in Marathon, Texas. And I got the impression anybody could come up and show to work on this co-op, but they didn't really know much about growing things because everything looked pretty cooked. But they did know something about building stuff. Now these are the places they lived, and they built their own places, so very creative, I thought. And then we get into some nice sunsets here. And in Alpine, there's the Museum of Big Bend, and I spent some time there. And you can see where we are. We're in the Thank you. Somebody else pronounce that for me. Desert. And that's where we are. And this is where the movie Giant was filmed. And this is the town that Elizabeth Taylor and Jimmy Dean. Anybody that hasn't seen Giant should take a look at it because you see this vast array of nothing, and that's what's around this town. This is the town of Marfa. And like I say, Elizabeth Taylor and Jimmy Dean stayed here. I think, was it Rock Hudson? Does anybody know? I'm not sure who some other famous actor. But one thing this town has is the Chianti art exhibit. And also this was actually featured on the Food Channel, the Food Shark. This is part of the Chianti. It's a very unusual art museum. It works with aluminum and copper and some other things. This was a copper, but the aluminum was interesting because the way they had the light shining on it. If you looked at it one way, it looked like it had a wall somewhere, and then the wall disappeared if you looked at it another way. So it's had some very interesting sculptures. That was the town of Marfa. And here, the Van Horn wells supplied water to the pecans. Otherwise, the area was very dry. This is further on. And here we are in El Paso. And it was good to go through there on Sunday. It wasn't at all busy. Sometimes it's all about timing. I went into Phoenix on a Sunday night, which was a big mistake because everybody was coming from the mountains and there was huge crowds coming in. But here we're going up from El Paso to Tempe, and here we're climbing a mountain pass called Emory Pass, and it's more than 8,000 feet high. And we're coming down, and there's some national forest campgrounds along the way you can stay at. This is what you see along the road. You can't stop your car and take pictures, but you can stop your bike and take pictures. And here we're in Silver City, which is an arts place where antiques and arts. Very nice town. Highly recommend you stop there sometime. Here we are in Globe. And these ruins are of the Bashka Gaha archaeological park. Shows the ancient past of the Salada people of Arizona. Now we're back on the road with some of the scenery. Now from there we're going the last leg of the trip through Arizona. We actually have wildflowers with the cactuses. Looks like it goes off the end of the earth there, that road. And here we're in Phoenix, which has some nice bike paths. Colorado, transformed into California. And this was a campground on the Colorado River, or part of some diversion of the Colorado River. And then they have huge dunes there on that side of the California. And these are dune buggies, and these are the dunes, and if you had a dune buggy there, it would be just a speck. These things are huge. So, I don't know what happens if flash flood comes through there, but... Now, those are lavender fields, but in the background is the fence to separate California from Mexico. Going up 3890 is the climb to out of San Diego, coming into San Diego, and we're into San Diego. Going to the obligatory, this is Dog Beach, putting our tires in the water, and taking a look at a few of the museums, the pandas at the zoo, and that was the trip. Any questions? Yes?
Gretchen, how many weeks was the trip?
It was 8 weeks, and I think 4 of them were in Texas.
Gretchen, do you lock your bike at night?
Yes, always lock the bike, even when you go to the grocery store. In the grocery store.
You had extra wheels on your bike?
Somebody had a trailer on their bike. I didn't have a trailer. A lot of people do pull trailers on their bikes. I have put all my gears in my panniers. Anybody? Yes?
So you fly your bus?
I took the train to Jacksonville. It's easy to take the train because all you have to do is turn the handlebars and take the pedals off. And they provide a bike box, and it's there when you get there. And as long as it's a baggage station, you can just put your bike together and bike right out of the train station. So it makes it convenient. And if you pick a smaller town with a baggage stop, it's even nicer. Then you don't have to deal with a lot of traffic. Jacksonville was a little busy for me, more busy than I would like to drive through, generally go through. Any other questions?